Good morning to all of you again. This is your teacher, Mr. Rodolfo Eric Angat. Today we'll be learning about performing an experiment which includes the independent variable and the dependent variable. Our essential question for today is, how do I identify the parts of an experiment? In order to understand this, we need to be aware of these vocabulary words. The vocabulary words include the investigative question, hypothesis, experiment, independent variable, dependent variable, control variable, and conclusion. You will be defining this on your paper. And you will get the definition from the short video that you will be watching. The video is about 8 minutes and it is a very simple video that will be helping you to identify why an experiment is conducted and how it is conducted. It will definitely tell you the meaning of these words here. So your task is to define these 7 vocabulary words based on the video that you'll be watching, and you'll be writing your definitions on your paper. Okay, so we're back after watching the video. Hopefully you have managed to define the following words. There are 7 words that you need to define. The first one is investigative question. The second one is hypothesis. The third one is experiment. The fourth one is independent variable. The fifth one is dependent variable. The sixth is constant or control variable. And the last one is the conclusion. Now, we will go to our actual demonstration here using the materials that I have identified earlier. If you haven't defined all of these words, you can find the definition, you can discover the definition of the words by listening attentively and watching what I will be doing here. I would like to know if the density of fresh water will change if I add table salt. This curiosity led me to come up with the investigative question. So I would like to know if adding salt in fresh water will change its density. And because of that curiosity, I have the investigative question as, which is denser, fresh water or salt water? Yes.
Salt water.
Okay, that is a very good hypothesis. What you just gave is a hypothesis. We don't know yet because we haven't tested it yet. Just like what I told you before, in science, you have to provide evidences. Now, based on this investigative question, I will now formulate my hypothesis. What is a hypothesis? My hypothesis will aim to provide a tentative answer to my investigative question. This is my investigative question. I will now provide a tentative answer to that investigative question. My hypothesis is my intellectual guess. So based on this investigative question, I would be saying both fresh water and salt water will have the same density because they both have water. Again, this is just a hypothesis. The hypothesis can be proven wrong or it can be proven right depending on the outcome of the experiment. Now, you can now answer what is your investigative question and what is your hypothesis. Of course, we all have different hypotheses, but as of now, let's have this hypothesis and let us try to validate if it is correct or not. Let's now go to the next step. Prepare 2 beakers and label the first one as A and then the second one as B. Fill each of the 500 ml beaker with 400 ml water and then put an egg in each beaker. Now, this is what we will be doing. But first, we need to remember, I need to wear my apron. Okay? To make it work. Okay. In performing an experiment, we need to label all of our materials. First, I'll be labeling the first beaker as beaker A. And the second beaker as beaker B. Okay, I'll be putting it like that. Beaker A would be this one, and this would be beaker B. The next thing that I will do is that I will transfer water to both beakers. Both beakers are of the same size and are of the same width and height. So it's constant. Now I'll be putting the same amount of water, and that is 400 ml. So this is the water. I'll be pouring 400 ml. Okay? So we have 400 ml in the first one. In the second one, I will also be putting 400 ml. So I have to make sure that they have the same amount of water. Okay, I need to put more water on the second beaker. Okay, so both setups now have the same amount of water, which is 400 ml. The next thing that I will be doing is that I'll be putting an egg in its setup. So these eggs are almost identical. Of course, there's probably a little bit of difference, but they're almost identical. I will put the first egg in beaker B, gently, and the second egg in beaker A. Now you'll be able to answer the first question. What happened to the egg? Did they sink or did they float? Both eggs sunk. So this tells us that the eggs are they denser or not compared to water? Are they denser or not? They are denser. So the eggs are denser than the water, that is why they sunk. Let's now go to the next one. Label beaker A as experimental. Label beaker A as control and beaker B as experimental. So beaker A will be the control. So we have it here. Beaker A as the control, and beaker B would be the experimental. Beaker A is the control, and beaker B is the experimental. After doing that, I will be mixing about 10 tablespoons, approximately 148 grams of salt in beaker B. So this is beaker B right here. And I have my table salt right here. I'll be transferring the table salt in this plastic cup. Okay? And I'll be using this tablespoon to put 10 tablespoons of salt in beaker B. Okay, so this is beaker B and this is beaker A. Okay? Count with me. 1, 2,
3.
how many? 6, 7. How many? 9. Oh, it's just enough. 10. So, we have 10 tablespoons of sugar added to it. Now, I have to mix it gently. Now, what is the question for this one?
What happens to the egg when the salt was added?
Okay, can you please read that?
What happened to the egg when the salt was added?
Okay, what happened to the egg when the salt was added? Okay, now it's a little bit cloudy, but what is happening to the egg? You see it? Okay, I'll raise it up so that you'll see it.
Excuse me, we can't start.
Okay,
Exploding!
so what's happening? Do you see the egg?
No.
Okay.
We see it like going around the back.
Okay. So it's still, it is not clear yet, but once the salt mixture clears up, you will see the egg. Okay? So let's go to the next step now. Get a tall, transparent container, fill it halfway with salt water. We'll be using this one. We'll just be waiting for the water to clear up. Okay. Now, I will now be showing it to you. Okay. Do you see the egg? Okay. Now, what happened to the egg after I added the salt? Answer the question now. Can you see it?
No.
Okay. You need to stand up. Do you see it now? Is it floating or is it sinking? Okay, now, we will now be performing an experiment. We will be performing an experiment because we want to know if our hypothesis is right or is wrong. We want to validate it. An experiment is meant to test the hypothesis. By doing this experiment, we will be able to validate or we will be able to prove or disprove the hypothesis. Let's now go to the first question. Prepare 2 beakers and label the first one as A and the second one as B. Fill its beaker with 400 ml water and then put an egg in its beaker. So, to perform the experiment, I have to wear my apron. Right there. Now, I have these 2 beakers here. This is the first beaker and this is the second beaker. As you can see, they are identical. They're the same. I will label the first beaker as beaker A and the second beaker as beaker B.
They both be.
Okay? This is Oh no, beaker A. That's a beaker A. Thank you. And this is beaker B. The next thing that I will do is that I will fill its beaker with the same amount of water. Okay, this is just water from the faucet or it's tap water. And they should have the same amount of water, which is 400 ml. Okay, that's 400 ml. I'll be pouring also 400 ml in this one. Now, I have to make sure that they have the same amount of water. Okay? Now, this one needs a little bit more. Okay. So, you will see here that it has 400 ml of water right here. So, I maintain two things here. First, same beaker, same types of beaker, and same amount of water. The next thing that I will do is that I will put 2 eggs. I made sure that they have the same size. These are raw eggs. And I will put the first one in the first beaker and the second one in the second beaker. Now, I will turn them around so that you will see them. Now, you can now answer the first question. What happened to the eggs? Did they float or did they sink?
They got bigger.
Okay, water also magnifies the eggs, and that is true. But, did they sink or did they float?
They float.
They sunk. So, write down your answer now. We will now go to the second question. Label beaker A as control and beaker B as experimental. Mix about 10 tablespoons, approximately 148 grams of salt in beaker B or the one labeled as experimental. So this is setup B and this is setup A. I will be labeling setup B as experimental. Okay, right there. And I'll be labeling setup A as the control. Right there. So we have the control. We have the experimental. We will now have our independent variable. And we will do the independent variable in our setup B or experimental. Independent variable is the one thing that is changed in the experiment. Remember, they're both the same. They have 2 beakers that are totally similar to one another. We have the same amount of water. We have the same size and type of eggs. But we will be changing one thing in the experimental setup, and that one thing that will be changing is called the independent variable. The one thing that will be changing is that we will be adding 10 tablespoons of salt. So this will be the independent variable. So count, Naisha, you count how many tablespoons that I'll be putting. Ready? Naisha? How many do we have now? 10. This is the 10th. Now, after adding the sugar or the salt, that is, I will now mix it. Shh, listen. Okay. I will now mix the salt water solution and After mixing it, I need you to observe what happens to the egg. So again, this is the experimental setup because this is the one that received the independent variable, and the independent variable is the adding of salt to the water. Now, what happened to the egg? Can you please read? Okay. Do you see the egg? Okay. Now, what happened to the egg after I added the salt? Answer the question now. Can you see it?
No.
Okay. You need to stand up. Do you see it now? Is it floating or is it sinking?
Sinking.
Okay. David, is it floating or is it sinking? It is floating. So, that's what's happening. Let's now go to the third one. Third question. Get a tall, transparent container, and this is our tall, transparent container right here. Okay? I will remove this egg from here and then put it on top of this tissue so that it won't roll. And then I will mix this thoroughly. This is for the third question. I will transfer the same saltwater solution into this tube, and I'll do it as gentle as possible, as slowly as possible. I'll transfer it there. So this is salt water solution. Now, the next thing that I will be doing is I'll be putting this egg back in the salt water, and I will do this slowly so that the egg will not break. So I will let it slide, and hopefully it doesn't break. Okay, do you see it? Is it floating or did it sink?
Sink.
It is floating. Okay. Now, so you can see that. This tells us now something about density. Which is denser? The salt water or the egg? Say that again loud. Okay. Which is denser? Salt water or the egg? Say it aloud.
Salt water.
The salt water. Now, this is now, right here, this is fresh water. This is from the top. I'll be putting color to this fresh water. I'll be putting colors so that we would know which is the salt water and which is the tap water, which is fresh water. Okay?
What color is that?
Red, orange, something like that. Now, I will now be mixing. Now, again, is this salt water? No, it is not salt water. Is this salt water? Yes. Is the egg floating? Yes. Now, let's put the fresh water, and I've only put the color so that you will know the difference between the salt water and the fresh water. I will now pour it. Shh, look at this one.
Is that green?
Do you see that one? Now, you tell me. Okay, that's good. Now, this is salt water. This is the egg. This is fresh water. Which is Fresh water is like the water that doesn't have salt in it, and we got this from the faucet. Now, tell me, which is the densest? Salt water, the egg, or the fresh water? The salt water is the densest. Which is less dense than the salt water? The fresh water and the egg. Okay, so this is the densest, this is less dense, and the least dense is the fresh water right here. So you will now be answering the question on your paper, why is the egg floating in the middle? Okay? Now, let's now go to the next one. Stop. 2, 3. We will now go to the next question, question number 4. Our investigative question is, which is denser, fresh water or salt water? Okay. And our hypothesis is both fresh water and salt water will have the same density because they both have water. But what did we find out in our experiment? Which is denser? Salt water. Is this hypothesis correct? No. So when you write your hypothesis, you should say, I found out that my hypothesis was wrong. Because this hypothesis is not correct. However, you have to state, why is it wrong?
Wait, what?
Again, I found out that my hypothesis was wrong because, David, how would you complete that? Why did we say that the hypothesis was wrong?
They both have water.
Because they have water in it? Yes, Caitlin? Very good. So, you will write in here, my hypothesis was wrong because we found out that the salt water is denser than the fresh water. And also the salt water was denser than the egg. So that is our conclusion. Now, let's go to the table. Remember, the conclusion either accepts or rejects the hypothesis based on the evidences gained from the experiment. And that is how you answered the conclusion. That is how you wrote down the conclusion. Let's now go to the table. Let's begin with the first one. What is the independent variable, or what is the one thing that we've changed? Rebecca, what is the independent variable in this experiment? That one thing that we changed, what was it? How did we make it a salt water? Okay, so our independent variable is when we added how many tablespoons of salt? Okay, adding 10 tablespoons of salt. Next one, Aquila. What is the variable, or what is the dependent variable? The dependent variable is the result. It's something that we want to measure. In this experiment, when we added the salt, what happened to the density of the water? It went up. So you would say here that the density of the water went up. Salt water is denser than fresh water, and that is the reason why the egg is floating. Let's now go to the third one. What are the things that you maintain throughout the experiment? The control variable. What are the things that we maintain throughout the experiment? Moses? Fritz? What are the things that we maintain as the same throughout the experiment? The amount of water, which is correct. The egg. What else? Caitlin, what do you call these things here? The beakers. Did I change the beakers? No. So we did not change the egg, we did not change the amount of water, and we did not change the beakers. So those were some of the control variables. Those are the things that we maintain. And another thing that we maintain is the location of the experiment. Did I move to another place? No. So that is also a control variable. So there are 4 control variables. Again, the first one, the beakers. The second one, the amount of water. The third one, the eggs. And the fourth one, the location. Those are the things that we maintain the same throughout the experiment. Finally, which is the experimental group? Is it A or is it B? Which is the experimental group? Is it A or is it B? It is B. This is how you conduct an experiment. I know for some of you it's the first time that you actually conducted an experiment like this, but I hope this will not be the last time, and I hope in the future you will be able to understand the different parts of the experiment. Do you have any question? Okay? That's it. Thank you so much.